Welcome to the Independent Workforce, the podcast where we explore the now and the future of work through the lens of temporary employment, such as freelancers, contractors, fractional experts, you name it. Here we speak with CEOs, recruiters, founders, and industry leaders about how they work with independent talent, the wins, the challenges, and the lessons learned. My name is Yurii. I'm growing the freelance market at FreelancerMap, an international platform that's been connecting top independent professionals with companies for over 20 years. And my guest is Jamie Jacobs, the founder and CEO of Gig Talent, where she helps companies solve their hardest leadership and transformation challenges fast without waiting for a full-time hire. And also a trusted advisor, keynote speaker, a professor at the University of Southern California, and the host of the Courageous Choice podcast, where she explores the bold decisions that shape modern leadership. So welcome, Jamie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Finally, we are here. Ever since I heard a conversation with Matt Mottola at Human Cloud, I was like, we need to continue this conversation at the Independent Workforce. So here we are. And before we dive into deeper into the conversation, so you've been in the HR for nearly 3 decades, it feels like.
Okay,
So
you're making me feel really old now, but no, yeah,
no, it's like a good way.
I grew in the corporate world. I loved it. I worked for amazing organizations, global organizations, Ingersoll Rand, Ingram Micro, Thales, and then some fast-growing startups. I loved my corporate career. And what I found in hindsight was it was always about building and transforming, right? So it was helping companies when they were having huge M&A, or they were starting up a new growth division, or they were building HR in excellence and going through some kind of transformation. And so I loved my career, and it was such a great way to learn business, across industries, and then kind of really what HR excellence looks like.
What were the most significant changes that you've seen throughout your career?
It's interesting. I think that the changes around what HR's role is kind of evolved as my career progressed, which was interesting. And, kind of learning the fundamentals just around laws and compliance and process and culture. I was really lucky because I actually started my career with Four Seasons Hotels and Resorts, which has an amazing culture. And so to kind of learn in a really effective culture was wonderful. I think the bigger shifts now is the pace of change. And what we're seeing then is how do you pull that through kind of the employee experience? And I think that, we're probably going to dive in here, but there's a lot of tension around kind of these old organizational models and operating systems that just weren't built really for the pace of change that we're facing today.
When was the first time you've met this word freelancer or contractor or independent talent, like whatever? First of all, what is your favorite word for this kind of experts?
Oh gosh, this is such a funny question. So I actually have one that I've been testing lately for executive entrepreneur. That's kind of the word I'm using because at Gig Talent, we play with kind of the really experienced end of the market. And so they've been very successful executives, and they've just chosen to work differently, launching a practice, doing whatever it is that they're excellent at. So that's kind of what I'm using. It's funny. I in my corporate career, I didn't have a great association with consultants. One, you kind of had, there was always, okay, I'll give you the associations. It was either like somebody wasn't that great and couldn't get a job, so they hung up with their own shingle, or they kind of, come in and never want to leave, so they just keep coming up with more stuff to do. I could see that a lot of colleagues internally might have been kind of threatened because they really didn't understand how they fit in from a hierarchy, or if they wanted their job. It was just weird. And then the flip side was, really smart people at some of the large consulting firms. But then I'd see organizations pay like $20 million and actually not affect the change. So that didn't give a great association either. So it was really funny because before I started Gig Talent, I went on my own, through my own independent journey. And, when people would be like, oh, and here's our consultant, I almost had like an identity pause because I was like, I don't know if I want to be, am I a consultant? Is that how you think? I always thought of myself as a business person, a practitioner, a partner, and the whole employee consultant label didn't really matter so much.
It sounds like black and white. So either you're a loser who can get a job, like, and you have to do whatever you get to do, or you like have this millions of dollars, and then you're just, like, ah, no, I'm not doing this, or I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I'm doing this for like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I feel like it's changing. I feel like it's already like 50 shades of gray, something inside of here. And I'm curious. So, what is the role that you currently play on this independent talent market?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest shift is the access of talent, the supply of talent, the amount of people who are excellent who are now choosing to work differently. And that my role is as the CEO of Gig Talent. We founded it because I had a bunch of peers who were CHROs who were excellent, and when I went on my own, they said, "I want to do what you're doing, but I'm afraid. I'm afraid of sales and business development. I just want to do the work I'm good at." And then some of them, a few sentences later, would say, "But I hate my job." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I don't think everyone should be a consultant, but nobody should stay where you hate your job, right?" And so as laws in the U.S. were changing around how companies engage with independent contractors, I was like, "Okay, I can do something to help. I can help that perceived barrier of entry for really excellent." Talented people to work differently and make it easy for companies to know, one, you don't have to source hundreds of people. You can come to us as like an agent for experts in the gig economy. So think of, maybe sports and athletes have an agent or actors might have an agent. It's the same thing with now over 50% of the workforce really playing in the gig economy in some capacity. That makes it much more, one, it's wonderful. It brings tons of options and opportunities for companies to source talent differently. But we need organization. It's a little bit like the Wild West because just like companies are struggling with full-time hires to know who really has done the work and is excellent and has the skills, it's the same, as for in the freelance market. How do you really know who's good and what they're good at? And so that's what we do. We bring organization to that gig economy for experts in the gig economy. And so we've now got a collective of around 100 coaches and consultants across the U.S. We've got a presence in the U.K. and growing. And what we look for are people who have really sat in the seat. They've done thousands of reps at whatever their experience is. Most of them are either in HR, talent. There's some operations and the like project management, that kind of thing. But they've been successful and they can help companies. They can come in and have immediate impact. And so we help companies transform faster towards whatever they're trying to do to adapt to be effective today.
If we are talking about companies, who is your ideal client? Like, what's your ideal client profile looks like?
Yeah, I love this question because I never give a great answer. No, I'm just kidding. I so we really play on two levels. We play with small to mid-sized companies that are growing, and so they're scaling fast, they need results, they may or may not have a strategic HR leader, so we can provide a fractional HR leader so that they don't compromise the skills needed to get where they need to go, but they can make an investment that's appropriate for their size and help scale with them, and then we'll help them eventually hire their full-time person or build out their HR team. And so that, or we can augment, if they do have an HR leader, we can augment where they don't have skills. And it just doesn't, my opinion is like, you don't need a full-time role for everything, but you do need certain experience and expertise. And so instead of, building these job profiles that everyone comes and says, this one's a unicorn, can you find the unicorn? And then they ultimately end up compromising in one area or another. Why not just hire the people who are great at those things and get unicorns in all of them doing what they need at the capacity you need? So that's one. And then also at an enterprise level. So same kind of thing, whether it's being their partner for coaching because we have so many and we can be kind of a one-stop shop, or augmenting those internal teams. Right now, there's a ton of HR transformation and looking to optimize as they're bringing in AI. We have a partnership with a tool that can basically help assess current processes, systems, tools, and people, and find where there's underutilization in the system, and kind of provide that roadmap for optimization with leveraging AI, which is just an easy win. But then the work that comes through that and pulling that through the employee lifecycle and your culture is some of the work that we're doing right now. So we play at both ends, but I guess the most concise answer would be that companies that are transforming and evolving, those are our clients.
So you call the talents that you are providing executive entrepreneurs. And I heard this so many times that companies are afraid of hiring like junior freelancers. I mean, like not junior in the way like that they just sit and do tasks, but in a way that some low key roles or something that is not really affecting a lot of the like working process, etc. Something that they really need help with. And with you, I'm talking about executive level, so leadership. Like, how do companies feel about hiring those people? Like, what are some blockers that usually companies? What is something that they? What are the biggest concerns that companies raise before starting to work with such experts?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, there's a significant mindset shift that's happening, and it's happening at different paces. So, I think, we all, myself included in HR, like in the past, we were told, don't treat contractors or consultants like employees, and certainly you can't have them lead people, right? Like that was a real belief. And I'll tell you, I mean, I led a HR business partner transformation with Dolby, for example, at a global level. I came in, ended up leading the team for 2 years, helped hire their ongoing VP and transition. And she's amazing, and they have a rock star team. And so I think that the blockers is mostly mindset. It's people don't understand also the caliber of talent that now is available in this capacity. And I think so that is a little bit different of a shift. It's like they don't even think of it as an option because they kind of, like you said, have whatever their version of those buckets are, around what they think a consultant is, or contractor or freelancer, whatever word people want to use. But I think that the people are starting to understand it. And what I'm talking a lot about is, people are kind of starting to understand what like AI native might be. And I'm saying, okay, so imagine your competition that's starting now and is on your heels, and they're AI native. So they're getting from conception to implementation faster than you already. Imagine that they're also capabilities native, meaning that, like many startups, they have a core kind of internal team, and they're augmenting with the skills that they need from experts who can help get them faster. By nature, they're going to have a more flexible, cost-effective structure, like financial structure, business model. They're in theory going to be having experts doing the work. So they're moving faster from a people and a technology side. And because they didn't build this big system kind of built for the old way of work, they also don't have the internal friction and waste that we're seeing across a lot of organizations now. So that's happening. Like, companies need to know that that's happening. And so the way I say it is like, how can we optimize quickly? If you believe that those things are happening, you can't just do the one side with technology. We have to do that, but we also have to think about the capability side, and that's the people side. And so the informing people, like what you do around, look, you have an access to talent that you didn't have before. Think about that from a variable cost perspective rather than everything being a fixed headcount. What options does that give you around how many more capabilities you can actually bring into your organization, and how you can orchestrate them in a meaningful way? And so I think painting the picture and helping people see it is kind of the opportunity that people like you and I have. And just to be clear, I don't think it's a one size fits all for any company. It's not like there's a right answer or a wrong answer. It's about finding the right mix for your business.
You use this word mind shift, and of course it was a little bit of like a typo kind of, but I really like this word mind shift, like mindset shift. It can be one thing, and it's something that companies are really refused to dealing with for some reason, because the more I talk to different people, they're like, we don't have this, we don't have that, we don't. So it's always like, why no, but it's never why yes. And I'm curious, like you told about this Adobe transformation. So how did it start? They reached out to you, or you was who pitched them? Like, tell me the story.
No, they were super leaning in. They're always on the forefront of kind of workforce innovation, and it started honestly as a 3-month engagement just to fill kind of a gap on a business partner level with one of their largest business units. But they knew that they needed transformation. And then once they kind of got to know me, they were like, hey, let's do this. And so it became something. And, I use that as an example because I love being a part of a team, right? I think there's sometimes an assumption that if somebody is working as a freelancer or independent, that they don't want to be part of a team, or they're not a good team player, or they're not a strong leader, or there was some interpersonal derailer that made them ineffective in corporate. And I think that's what, is a kind of a bubble we have to burst. It's like, no, no, no. Many people love those things, right? They also want to be able to work autonomously. They want to have, impact across multiple organizations. They've maybe discovered a niche that they're uniquely good at. And like for me and many of our gig talent consultants, a lot of times that's transformation. And by nature, transformation used to not be permanent, right? So some of people, like if you look at my resume, I mean, some people would say, well, you'd move after 3 years. And I go, yeah, my attention span was like 2 to 3 years because I was coming in, doing the transformation. And then, in large organizations, obviously there was always another project to go to. So sometimes it was longer, but, and now, you could even argue that transformation is ongoing. So that's not even true. But what that allowed people like me to do is go, oh, my skill is transformation. I can just go do that, right? And I can be great at it. And then people can get me for what I'm great at. And, the things that I'm not so great at, they can have somebody else do that loves that, right? So it's just about, I think we do better at the work we love anyway, so.
It's totally to your point. When I speak with my clients about like building communities for their business, I tell them, look, I'm here to help you do it in like 3-6 months to start like the basics to start this journey. And then you will do on your, I don't want you to be my lifetime client. I want to
Yes.
help you start and move on. And then of course you can reach out to me. We can have some extra calls here and there. I can guide you, but I don't want me to be your push. You have to do it. Like I will help you, still you have to do it. So, to your point, like jumping between projects, it's totally good. That's exactly what you are hired for. And,
Right.
coming back a little bit to this transformation. So what were some challenges or some blockers or maybe some stigmas you had to break that you had to deal during this transformation
In
process?
that example,
Yeah.
yeah, with Dolby, yeah. I mean, so even though they were very much leaning into elastic talent or agile talent strategies, this was a bit of a unique case. A leader, first of all, leadership role, interfacing with the C-suite and their global teams, and driving change and building a team, and those kinds of things. So there was a little bit of like, are you going to stick around? Right. Like there was a little bit like, how invested are you? So there was that. There was like any position, just a new person coming in, you need to build relationships with stakeholders, cross-functional stakeholders. And so people just needed to get to know me, and that's not, doesn't always happen overnight. And I know you've been working with some German companies and other companies, Polish companies, and like we had a large presence in both Germany and Poland, and they were just a little like, who are you anyway from the US kind of thing, right? So there, I think that there's normal things that any new leader is gonna have to overcome. But I think once they realized like, no, I'm really committed, and I'm someone who, if I'm in, I'm all in, and if I'm not in, I'm not in, and you would know it. So I think that I was able to build trust, and then they realized like, no, she's here, she cares, she is as invested in this as I am. She doesn't have, and in fact, she doesn't have a personal agenda other than helping us achieve what we're here to achieve. And so that allowed, things to move faster, the team to trust me. I'll still have one-on-ones with many of the team just informally because I care about them and we're friends.
This episode of The Independent Workforce is brought to you by Freelancer Map, the home of freelancing. Whether you are looking to hire top freelance talent fast or a freelancer ready to find your next big project, Freelancer Map connects the right people with the right work. No endless job boards, no guesswork, just direct access to verified experts and opportunities across the globe. Visit freelancermap.com and start building your next success story today. No wonder, because I see this belief behind you, and you like it's totally Ted Lasso way. Like, who are you
Yeah.
anyway? That you're coming from the US and you're a basketball coach. How would you coach a soccer team? So I
Yeah.
totally get this,
Yeah.
how they perceived. And so, final question about this example. So, paint me a picture before and after you worked with them.
So before there was a feeling that the business partner team was not, uh, seen around corners, really driving the organization to the next level of performance, maybe asking the right questions. There were questions about they were very siloed, kind of not working cross-functionally, either kind of within HR, but even beyond that. There was limitations around their capacity, kind of what might be traditionally called like organizational development type skills. They were just a little more tactical. And some of that was bandwidth, some of it was structure, and some of it was capabilities. And so coming in and really starting to understand the business and the team, and then helping create a vision of what that role could be, and helping, inviting the people that were there to envision their role in it, and help co-create. I think that that's super important today. It wasn't like, I didn't bring an old playbook. I came in and really was curious about what they were trying to do, and helped design the right kind of go forward team, and brought some really amazing people onto that team. And we gelled, beyond my direct team, but within all things Dolby. They operate an ecosystem. They're amazing at it. And I think that it was really, learning to shape a global business partner team that could kind of operate in the same way and have that fluid impact. And so, I think so that was the outcome, was just a higher performing team, a team that felt more engaged with both the business and their internal stakeholders in all different ways, that was agile and quite frankly, able to navigate, continued strategies. Obviously, that we faced COVID and dealing with that, but things like continued location strategies and global strategies, and AI and transformation. They've had a ton of innovation. They're just a really amazing company. So I think that those were some of the biggest kind of, from this to this high performing organization, in a way where it didn't break, and people really continued to just uh, dedicate their discretionary effort, because they felt compelled to the vision that we were trying to create. And George, one of their leaders there, said to me, I kind of got a reputation as being the person who, I would just ask the question. Like, I was pretty direct. And I think when you're external and you're not afraid of your job, you're willing to ask the difficult questions, not in a jerk way, but in a way that's really like impactful, and just trying to make sure we don't have blind spots, and let's do the difficult things. And if there's a reason not to, that's okay too, but at least I'm not doing my job if I don't help us at least like have the conversation.
And it's also amazing that you mentioned it, because an independent expert, as an internal talent, you can call shit and not 100%. Be afraid of being fired, because you can be very honest, once again, not in an asshole way, but like in a good way.
I think that's one of the biggest reasons people should like have some kind of practice of bringing in an external person, because they're exactly that reason. They're not going to be part of the system, and so they just don't acclimate to that, and so they're able to see things. And everybody has blind spots, even high performing, amazing cultures and organizations. We all have blind spots. So why wouldn't you like bring in somebody that's competent, that you have confidence in, and like just learn from them for whatever that period of time is?
How do you win internal stakeholders? I mean, for example, there is someone from the team that wants to work with independent talent, and they already know who they want to work, and then they have to go to their managers and kind of like win their hearts. How do they do this?
Oh, it's such a good question. So I think that, again, I think this power of talking about capabilities and outcomes, I don't think any leader is going to argue if you have a compelling outcome that you're trying to drive. Mm-hmm. And if you have a solution that's going to help get there faster, and it's either more economically, or it might be expensive, but it's for a shorter period of time and you get there faster. So long term, it's less expensive. I think there's a business case for that. I think that, that's the easiest way. And then I think the idea about capabilities, building capabilities, one of the cool things about like what we do at Gig Talent, for example, and what I did when I would go in, like this wasn't like, here's Jamie's playbook and just do it and then you're good. Like it was more about building those internal capabilities. So when I left, the team had more capabilities. They had a leader who was the right fit, who had her own vision, was going to take them to the next level. It's about really adding value in an incremental way. So I think that, there's a business case, and for those leaders who are resistant, I would just say, ask why. Ask yourself why. Like, what is the fear? Is it an old story? Is it not understanding the access to talent that you now have and the options and that provides? Or is it, something broader, like more, it could be internal. We have made choice. Like when I was a corporate executive, my identity was very much as a corporate executive. And I still think corporations are a great place to be if that's where you want to be. And, so it's not about like good or bad. And your choice to recognize that talent comes in different forms right now shouldn't undermine whatever personal decisions you're making around your own career. So I think it's, it does come in different ways. But so, leaders can just ask themselves like, why? Many companies before COVID would have said, no, we can never work remote, right? That would have been the answer. And they all realized, oh, I guess we can, maybe it's not ideal, but we can to some capacity, and the world didn't, our business didn't break or whatever. So whatever those perceived constraints potentially, I bet there's solutions, and companies, I'll tell you, companies are already doing them. So again, you can be behind if you want to be behind, but most leaders, that's not their intention.
I feel like currently the hardest part is finding those trailblazers who are already doing this. And I recently had a conversation with a few more folks during the podcast, and they told me that out of like 10 people, only one person is driving this transformation. Only one person out of 10 has this mindset shift. And I feel like, as you've said, we need more business cases. We need more sharing the stories. We need like be more vocal. And then especially people who get, and also, in companies, sometimes you have this bureaucracy and you want to keep everything to yourself. You don't want to share your wins, because if your department is winning because of independent talent, no way I will ever tell my secret to someone else. So they start to win. I feel like it's also like a huge blocker, inside.
That's fascinating. Well, yeah. And that goes back to like the whole operating system. What a shame that if this department is winning, but the enterprise isn't, like, to me, that's the wrong decision. Right. And so, but we allow that. Our current structures and the way people are rewarded often allow that. But I also think there's just a lack of awareness. And I know some of the good work that you do helping companies understand how to implement, elastic workforce or flexible workforce and the benefits to it. And again, I'm sure you have a similar approach. It's not a one size fits all, but opening that into, having an integrated talent strategy and deciding what that means for your organization, I think is super important. And, the other part is like, I think most leaders would understand, we have, let's say it's a project, or it's a M&A and an integration, or it's some kind of system implementation, or it's like these projects that they know aren't going to last forever, or we need to staff up because we're going commercial and we just got Series C and we have to grow. They know that there's like an influx, but if they staffed full-time headcount for that influx, then they're going to have too much overhead, right? So why wouldn't you think, oh, we know we have a blip, whatever that growth period is, and then we need people who are the builders who can help us achieve that. And then when we stabilize a little bit, even if you need a headcount, my guess is it's different than the person who would have helped build. So just recognizing, how you can kind of smartly use the talent available to you. I think that it's just mind blowing for people once they get it, right? Once they get it, they're like, oh, now I can't unsee this, but they just couldn't see it before.
Yeah, and to a point that there is no one size fits all, and still I hear that some companies, they think of independent talent as either or. So either I hire full-time expert or I hire independent. They never think that they can, combine this superpower, that they can embed like some external talent into internal team and make them work together as a full mechanism for like 3 months or 6 months. And they think that, no, as you've said also, like either I take this person and they are disconnected from the bigger part, or I don't hire them at all. So from your experience, and once again, a little bit coming back, I hear this a lot, blended workforce, this word, which means that external, internal, of course, full-time experts are not going anywhere. So full-time experts, external experts, and AI. And also people love some kind of formulas, some kind of numbers like 80-20 or something like that. So
Yeah.
from your experience, what is the best balance of using this blended workforce? Once again, no one size fits all, but just a general
Yeah.
understanding.
Gosh. You know, I don't know. I mean, I could see 80-20, 70-30. Or, even more. I'll tell you, like, these, like, I mean, we're kind of a relatively small organization, and we have a core small group, but we have an extended amount of experts who we leverage. And so it's probably more, I don't know, 40-60, like 40 full-time employee, but that, I just have a different mindset. And I like the flexibility, right? So I think, I don't think there's a right way, but I know it's if you're not thinking about it, and if you have more than 90% FTEs, you're probably not leveraging this to the extent you can.
How do you see the role of freelancers evolving in the global workforce?
Yeah, so the data shows that more and more people are choosing to work that way. I would say, kind of, I think you said earlier, like, I don't know where that's going to land. My hope is that companies actually figure out how to take out some of the friction, which is why many people choose to leave. Yeah. So I don't think the answer is everybody needs to go fractional. But I think that if companies don't figure that out, then we will continue to see more people just choosing. One of the jokes that I told some of our friends, Tony and Matt, I'll say, like, you can call me an employee, you can call me a consultant, but don't call me mediocre, right? Like, and I think that, I just have this fundamental belief that people want to be productive and want to do good work. And if you're in a company and because of old operating systems, poor leadership, whatever the reasons are, changing priorities. If people feel like their work is not moving the needle forward, they do one of two things. They either settle in place, or they leave. And so I'll say there was this old experiment where with a rat, and if they went to the left, they got zapped. They go to the right, they get zapped, and eventually they'd be standing still. And I think there's a lot of companies that have percentages of employees that are the equivalent of standing still, because moving forward is not productive because of the operating system and this kind of tension or waste or whatever. And just like logically, nobody wants to waste their time, right? And especially the incoming workforce, who has really assessed the role that work plays in their life, they're not willing to do it. So if the companies can't figure this out, I think we will continue to see more, and then the supply side will force companies to shift. My hope and the work that we do is to try to make companies actually great. And then it just becomes more of a balance. And I think it will be other factors that really shape personal decisions around that.
When you want to have some business education, you most likely go to some MBA courses, whatever. But where do leaders learn about this workforce changes?
I think HR leaders should be going to different conferences and really leaning in and understanding. I was shocked, actually. I was with a talent team last week, and they just, it wasn't really on their radar. And then once we started talking about it, they were like, oh, and it went into everything, not just their talent strategy, but then they were thinking, because we're talking about this pace of change and what's happening in workforce. Their learning and development leader was talking about, classes like don't really do it anymore. We really have to integrate the learning into the work itself, which is, again, how do we do that, right? It requires a pretty major shift. And so I think as once your eyes are opened, then they start to see this possibilities for their organization. So I think if you're someone who's listening and you're like, I don't know where to start, I don't know how to stand this up in your organization, they can call you, they can call me. We do that. We help companies really understand that, whether it's just sessions with HR teams or talent teams or executive teams, or even, helping leaders really understand and helping companies kind of create their own customized like menu of talent, and helping leaders understand like different use cases and when this might make sense and when that might make sense, and what are the priorities for your business, and how should we consider this as an opportunity. So I think all of the things. Hopefully, listening to your podcast, people are learning. But I think that just there's no dumb question, and there's also no if anybody said I have all the answers, they're just lying, because this is something where it's about evolution, it's about co-creation, it's about collective experimentation, and we're figuring it out together and creating kind of what I call the brave new world of work.
Currently it's so easy to really learn, because if people want, they can just go and Google or ChatGPT or whatever, like contingent workforce, flexible talent, independent
That's
experts.
the easier answer.
Like
Yeah,
I mean, like
true.
in a way, but I feel like it's also coming a little bit back, because as you've mentioned many, many times, it's all about the mindset. And even before Googling those keywords, people need to switch something in their mind that they are ready to lead, like unleash this power to stop caring about controlling every single person, to being open to not being afraid that someone will come to the company and stole something from them, or that they will hire some losers who couldn't find a job like as a full-time expert, etc. So there are
Yeah.
so many mind blockers, and it's like crazy. And I'm curious, what one change do you think would accelerate trust and adoption of these independent experts worldwide?
I think it's experiencing what great looks like. I think getting a great fractional or independent person in for some impactful work, and companies like now having a different association with it. I think that's really going to be the biggest shift. I think how you get there is different, but it's what's interesting is because so many more people are choosing to work this way now. Someone who's maybe a leader at an organization, someone that they've worked with and respected, or worked for and respected, now is choosing to work this way. And so they have an association with that person as being a great talent first, and then the consultant came second. So that might be, if they engage with them, they'll be like, oh, okay, so there's probably more people like this person that I already respected who are choosing to work this way. So I think those are the things that are happening. I'm like a super optimist, if you can't tell. So I hope that's what happens, rather than them being totally disrupted by competitors who are doing it and then being forced to, or their boards and shareholders kind of coming and saying your cost model is unsustainable, and you've been an ineffective leader because you haven't driven the change needed. So hopefully it comes with the carrot rather than the stick.
And also, to a point, when you just start working with one such expert, you're open the whole possibility of other experts, because usually these people are connected with other people from the niche. It's never just, I don't know a single great freelancer or like interim expert who doesn't know like at least dozen of other experts in a similar niche or in complementary niches. So I feel like, just starting with one, and it's like, you this Pandora box of independent
Yes.
experts right in front of your door.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what we're trying to do at Gig Talent, is like help bring organization to the gig economy. So helping making it easier for companies who they don't have time to vet 100 people. And yes, everybody knows somebody, but how do you know if that person really is the right person for this unique fit? So we become that one-stop call, but then they have access to a huge network of people who are already vetted. We know who's good and what they're good at, and we can get you the right resource like within days. So.
Jamie, I wish to have the sky as a limit, but time is a limit to our conversation. So the final
Yeah.
question, what advice would you give to companies just starting to use freelancers and to freelancers entering the market?
Ooh, I love it. Okay, so for companies, I think, do pilots, right? Like just tiptoe your way in. You don't have to necessarily go to a 30% freelancer or whatever today. It's finding use cases where it makes sense, where you can have small wins and prove to leaders in the organization and your teams that these can be really valued team members, and think about how do you integrate them, how do you make them successful, set them up for success. I think that just start, and you'll find what's right for you, and then you'll kind of build that trusted ecosystem that Yurii is talking about. And for freelancers or people who are considering entering the market, I always say, like, look, this is about everybody really finding your own authentic journey. And people have different motivations, right? Some people are like, I want to make as much or more than I was making internally. Now we have a huge demographic of people who are in what you might call your second act. I call it preferment, where you do what you prefer, but they're hugely skilled, right? Most of them. And so there's lots of different motivation of why people are making that change. And I think getting to know yourself, doing the work to understand really where you bring significant impact and an immediate impact, and not be like, sometimes we underestimate because something comes easy for us. We think, oh, like I remember going, oh, you're going to pay me just to do that? That doesn't even feel like work. But what comes innate for some of us is not innate for others. And so if you can figure out what your superpower is and do more of it, it's not going to feel like work. It's going to feel like fun. And, for some of us, you kind of get that pit in your stomach of fear. And I would just say, do it anyway. Do it anyway. I used to tell myself the worst, I can always take another job, right? So there doesn't need to be fear.
I remember someone said, I don't know who exactly, that if you love your work, you won't work a single day in your life. So I feel like it's exactly what it is, to tap
100%.
into what you adore, what you like doing, and then you just getting paid for something that you are having fun for. I feel like sometimes it's definitely very, very fairy tale-ish picture. Still,
I know.
way to go. And
I'll just say this. So on my recent podcast, my sister was interviewing me, and she told me, like, years ago, this was like related to personal relationships. She had said, when it's right, it just flows and it's easy. It doesn't mean it doesn't take effort. It just flows. And, quite frankly, I was like, you're full of shit, but she was right. She was totally right. It just flows. When it's right, it flows. And it's the same with work. It doesn't mean you're not, I mean, quite frankly, the people I know and myself, we're working our tails off, but we love it. We love it. And we're having, better outcomes and impact for the people we work with because we're doing something we enjoy.
Last but not least, name 2 people I should reach out to talk about the independent workforce.
Oh, goodness. That's fun. Okay. So while you're talking to a lot of people, I think that we already know. Gosh, I kind of want to come back to you on that, but let's think. Okay, you could talk to, I think it'd be interesting, actually, like a talent leader on who has leaned into that. So that could be interesting. Like either George Hudgens at Dolby or Nick Fitzpatrick at Dolby, both of them were instrumental in standing that program up within their organization, and they could share things that worked and maybe challenges that they came or are still facing. So that would be one. Those would be two, and I'll have to come up with some more and send them to you direct.
I'll definitely follow up and ask you much more questions. And
Okay.
What is the easiest way to connect with you?
Well, thank you. So LinkedIn, of course, Jamie Latiano Jacobs. Our website is gigtalentagency.com. I'm just starting a Substack, so you can see that, or listen to The Courageous Choice. Join me for that podcast. Honestly, I view this whole thing as co-creation. So I welcome feedback, input, questions. Tell me if I'm full of it, all of it. I like to hear the impact and the stories and continue to learn, because I think this is the most exciting time we could be doing this work. So thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
No, Jamie, I met you first at Human Cloud, and while listening to your conversation back then, I was like, this is a person I want to talk to. And then we finally connected on LinkedIn and we're having this conversation, and I see a lot of passion and energy in what you are doing. And I feel like that we need more and more people who are like you, who are really passionate about what they do. And as you've said, it's not easy and things, but you can clearly see you liked what you are doing, and it's a bad thing. And as long as we are like being in this bubble, I think this bubble is getting bigger and bigger, and who knows what will happen. Maybe at some point it will be like not like 20-80, maybe it will be like 50-50, who knows. But since we have people like you who are making this industry better, I'm sure it will go off. So thank you so much for sharing your experience here.
Such a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm really glad we've become friends. So thanks so much.
Thank you, right? And see you in the freelance world. And for listeners, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Independent Workforce. I hope you've taken one step closer to working smarter with freelance talent. If you enjoyed this conversation, subscribe to learn even more and share it with your colleague. And remember, the future of work is now.